listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you already know the deal. But if this is your first time listening, welcome. I'm a relationship coach. And although I work with people who are dealing with all kinds of relationship challenges, I specialize in helping folks who are engaging in something they think counts as infidelity. And I do this without shame, blame, or judgments. I firmly believe that we're all entitled to guidance and support that respects the fullness of our humanity and the complexity of our situations, even if we're doing something that other people think is wrong or that we ourselves think is a little dubious. If you're in the midst of a messy moment in your life, I can help you address your situation as a puzzle to be solved rather than a big bad problem that has to be fixed or is hard to fix. I provide compassionate, confidential coaching via Zoom, and you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. All right. Today, we're going to talk about clarifying what we want in our romantic relationships. And this topic can be especially urgent or important if we're trying to make a choice about whether we want to stay in a particular relationship or not. But it can also help us improve our relationships. And doing this kind of thing can also help us more effectively attract the kind of relationship we want to have if we're not in a relationship, but we're looking for one. So, in order to set the stage for this topic, I want you to know that my approach to relationship coaching has been informed by many aspects of my education and my professional experiences. And it is also informed by my personal experiences. I have a spouse, and we have been together for approximately 1 million years, which is amazing considering that I am less than 1 million years old. No, I'm exaggerating, but only slightly. We've been together for almost 18 years, which is a fair amount of time. And this relationship has been one of my greatest spiritual teachers in life. Perhaps my greatest spiritual teacher in life. And there are many reasons for this, but one is that, despite the fact that my human and I have loved each other so much, we've also had some really challenging times together. And I dragged us to couples therapy a number of times, and we worked with several different therapists. And none of it helped all that much. And, it pains me to say that because I really thought couples therapy is the answer to couples problems, to relationship problems. And I don't have anything against couples counseling or therapists in general because they're all different and we all have different needs. But, our experience was, despite the fact that all of our therapists were these lovely people, incredibly caring, well-intentioned people who obviously had training and expertise, none of it did us much good. Certainly wasn't completely useless, but it certainly wasn't as helpful as we needed it to be. Interestingly, what finally changed our relationship really significantly was me learning how to take responsibility for myself in new ways. More specifically, when I learned how to get clear on what my expectations were about how our relationship was supposed to be, and learned how to question whether or not these expectations were really serving me or us, life became a whole lot better, both for me and for my spouse. And 100% of this came from me being trained to be a coach and being coached by other coaches, and coaching my own clients and actively coaching myself on a regular basis. So although it might sound like a cheesy sales pitch, it is 1,000,000% true. The coaching tools and practices I use and teach completely changed my orientation to my relationship. And oh my God, I am so much happier for it. So I preach what I practice and I practice what I preach. And I found that the tools and approaches I employ have been tremendously helpful for my clients too, which is, of course, wonderful. So now we will begin to talk specifically about how to clarify what we want in a relationship. And there are four important points, four orienting points I want to make up front. First and foremost, you have the right to prefer anything. You have the right to prefer whatever you want. You have the right to want whatever you want in a partner or in a relationship. Okay. So, like often people tell me, well, I really want this, but I know that's not realistic or I shouldn't really want that. No, you're allowed to want whatever you want. However, there is a but. Sometimes it's important to be aware, I should say, that sometimes our preferences are reflections of what is truly important to us. Sometimes our preferences point to our true north. And sometimes they just point to attachments we've picked up along the way somewhere, somehow, that aren't really serving our highest priorities or our deepest desires. And in our romantic relationships, hanging on to our own unexamined preferences for no great reason often causes us a lot of grief. On the flip side, of course, our own failure to get clear about what we want and why we want it makes it a lot harder for us to know whether a relationship is right for us or not, or to know which battles to pick in a relationship. It's really important to draw lines that are appropriate for us. But it's also so important to be clear about which lines are the right lines to draw. Because our fellow humans, especially the ones we're closest to, especially the ones we spend the most time with, have the most intimate ongoing relationships with, are quite likely to drive us crazy and let us down and not meet all of our expectations all of the time. I should say that the humans we're closest to are quite likely to drive us crazy and let us down sometimes. I don't mean all the time. And this brings us to important orienting point number 2. Relationships can be as challenging and confounding and difficult as they are wonderful. And that's okay. There's a really prevalent idea out there that if relationships are challenging or challenging in certain ways or for a particular amount of time, it's a sign that something's wrong. But how could relationships be anything other than difficult at times? Being intimately connected with another human being is messy business. So, of course, there's a difference between knowing this in the abstract or believing that this is true in the abstract and being able to accept and embrace the challenges and difficulties in our own relationships as they come up. And we all have the ability, the opportunity, the option to learn how to do this. But doing this can be challenging. And that's why we're all here, right? We're all figuring this stuff out with help. Okay, important overarching point number 3. Your relationship with yourself is your most important human relationship, not your relationship with your partner. So many of us think our relationship with our partner is our most important human relationship. Many of us lose ourselves in our relationships. Many of us expect our romantic partner to fulfill needs that it's impossible for them to always meet, and that we can very effectively meet for ourselves. So many of us don't even know that having a relationship with ourselves is a thing, or if we do know it's a thing, we neglect it. And starting right now, we can start to engage differently in our relationship with ourselves. We can start making changes now, and they don't have to be really big changes to have really significant effects. Okay, important point number 4. There is so much that you can do as an individual that will improve your romantic relationship, even if your partner doesn't do anything differently. This is kind of like a magic trick, except it really isn't. When you start to change your thoughts and feelings about your partner and about your relationship, you participate differently in the relationship. And from there, the whole dynamic changes. And in order to do this, we have to be willing to take responsibility for our own stuff. And in fact, we have to be willing to take radical responsibility for our experience of everything in life, including our romantic relationship, but not limited to it. And sometimes this doesn't sound appealing or sexy to people, but it's actually the best thing ever. It puts us back in charge of our own experience of living, which is awesome. So today, what I'm going to do is offer you a writing exercise that will help you clarify your preferences and help you identify some shifts in your mindset and your behavior that you can start to make right now. And yes, you heard me correctly. I'm going to lead you through an actual writing activity. So if you're in the position to do so, grab something you can write with. And for heaven's sake, if you're driving or operating heavy machinery, just listen for now and do the writing part later. Okay, here we go. The first thing I would like you to write down is 3 to 10 things that are really important to you in your life as a whole. The number of things you write down isn't terribly important. I want you to pick a few or maybe several, but you don't need to try to make this the longest list ever. And of course, if you're following along and doing the writing exercise, you might want to pause the recording while you do this. To clarify, I want you to write down what's important to you in your life as a whole, not in your relationship with your partner specifically. We're going to talk about that next. So don't list things about a romantic relationship that are important to you or qualities in a partner that are important to you. But aside from that, you can list anything you want. What's important to you in life? What's important to you to do, be, or have? The options are unlimited. If you don't know what's important to you in life, now is a chance to begin to decide. It's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you knew once and don't really know anymore. Start by writing down what you think might be important to you. Having a clear sense of what is really important to us in life and what looks like true north for us is important for so many reasons. But we also tend to lose sight of this stuff for so many reasons. We're constantly busy. We're constantly being pulled in 80,000 different directions. We're in the habit of focusing on other people's needs and feelings more than our own or whatever. So if you've gotten sort of like knocked off the mountain and you've lost sight of what's truly important to you, that's okay. This is an opportunity to check in. Remind yourself of what's most important to you, or maybe revise your understanding of what's important to you. And it's important for us to do this on a regular basis. So once you've made your list, write down why these things are important to you. Getting clear on why we care about the things we care about helps us create clarity and augment our beliefs. And doing this, knowing and remembering and reminding ourselves of what's important to us and why in our lives as a whole serves two really important functions in our relationships. One, it helps us remember that our relationships, as important as they are not the only important thing in our lives. They're not our entire lives. And sometimes we forget this. And remembering this can provide a really helpful dose of perspective. Also, having a clear sense of what we consider important helps us honor these things for ourselves, even if our partner doesn't always respect or support us or agree with us in the ways we might like them to. It's always nice to have other people's support and respect and agreement, especially from someone that you're in an intimate relationship with, very much involved with. But there's no way to ensure that we're always going to get the support and respect and agreement that we might crave. We can, however, always give that to ourselves. Okay. The second thing I want you to ask yourself is, what do I want or expect to get from my partner and from our relationship. So many of us don't really know what the hell we want out of a relationship. We like it when some things happen. We like it when our partner behaves in particular ways. And then we don't like it when other things happen. And in a sense, this is completely normal, but it's a lot easier for us to have the kind of relationships we want to have if we know what we want out of them. So, again, write down 3 to 10 things you want or expect from your relationship or your partner. Again, the number doesn't really matter. And then write down why you want or expect these things. And just to reiterate, going back to the orienting points I made in the beginning, you're allowed to want anything. You can have whatever preferences you want. But arbitrary preferences are one thing, and clear, intentional, well thought out preferences are another. And this is why it's so important to clarify yourself why you want what you want, why you expect what you expect. It's not that you have to justify your preferences to anyone other than yourself. It's because it helps you clarify your reasons for your preferences, and that will help you honor them. So, for instance, although I primarily work with people who are engaging in infidelity, people who are doing the cheating, I also work with people who have been cheated on. And sometimes these folks have a really hard time figuring out what they want to do about their relationship or within their relationship after they learn their partner has cheated. Sometimes they'll ask me things like, well, is cheating really that bad? Or how do I know if this person has just made a mistake that I can forgive them for? Or if they've crossed a line that really isn't okay with me? And the answer to all of these questions and to questions like them is that you have to decide. I can help you decide, but I can't decide for you. We all have to decide for ourselves what we're okay with and what we're not okay with. And getting clear on our reasons for our preferences really helps us do this. Why would we want or expect something out of a relationship? Why would we choose to tolerate or not tolerate something? I didn't say that right. Why would we choose to tolerate something or accept it? Maybe somebody cheats and it's not the end of the world. Maybe somebody cheats on us and we don't want anything more to do with them. There aren't any objectively right answers out there. So we've got to decide for ourselves what's truly right for us. Okay. Sip of water, then we'll go to the third point. The third thing that I want you to ask yourself is, how can you give yourself whatever you want from your partner or from your relationship to a greater extent? So I'll say that a little differently. How can you give whatever you want from your partner or your relationship to yourself to a greater extent? We tend to think that our partners and our relationships are supposed to meet certain needs for us or can uniquely fulfill certain needs. And I would say that in a sense, this is true. Connection with another person, intimate, ongoing connection with another person can bring us so many unique experiences. But it is also true that we can meet a lot more of our own needs and desires than we usually think we can. And it's true that our partner will never be able to meet our needs or fulfill our desires as consistently as we can for ourselves. Furthermore, when we fill our own cup, when we take care of our own needs, we're better able to enjoy our partners rather than depending upon them to meet certain needs for us or to fulfill certain desires for us. And this is true no matter how wonderful our partners are. This is not a sign that anything's wrong. So, write down 3 to 10 ways that you can give yourself more of what you want from your relationship or your partner. How can you give this stuff to yourself more instead of expecting it from them? And this might be a hard one. Excuse me. It might be hard to come up with ideas because many of us are very used to thinking that there are some things we can only get from other people, like understanding or support or love or connection or intimacy. these are things that we can extend to ourselves too. And if you don't know what it would be like to give yourself understanding or support or love, ask yourself what it would be like. That's the beginning of the process of finding out. Let your imagination do some work here. There's no one size fits all prescription for this stuff. There are plenty of people out there who can help you learn how to love yourself or be a good friend to yourself or accept yourself or give yourself support or companionship or whatever. And I am one such source of this kind of help. But no matter who helps you or doesn't help you, you're going to have to do some experimentation. How can you meet more of your own needs? Another way to think about this question is to ask yourself, what do I love, enjoy, appreciate, delight in, etc.? And how can I bring more of that into my life? So think about it that way if that's helpful. Creating joy and happiness in your life is your job. No matter how excellent your relationship is, no matter how great your partner is. Sometimes when I talk to people about this, I get explanations for why it's hard or even downright impossible for us to create joy and happiness for ourselves. And to that I say, what are you getting out? Excuse me. To that I say, what are you getting out of believing that you don't have the power to create your own happiness and joy? You might want to consider that. Okay. So hopefully you did make a list and now you have some sense of how you can create more of what you want for yourself instead of depending on your partner for these things. And now from here, your job is to actually do these things. Doesn't matter if you know what's good for you if you don't do it regularly. So for instance, like knowing that you feel more connected to yourself and more at ease and more at peace in the world, if you meditate every day, doesn't do you much good unless you actually sit down and meditate every day. When we take it upon ourselves to create a relationship with ourselves and fill our own cups to a greater extent, this can also help us deal with our dissatisfaction in a relationship or our desire to end a relationship in a completely different way. And the way this, there are many ways this functions. One is it's a lot easier to exercise our discretion about others and about which relationships are right for us or aren't right for us when we're content with ourselves. We're less likely to cling to someone because they provide comfort or companionship when we know we can generate those things for ourselves anytime we want to. Okay. And of course, if you're not trying to leave a relationship, creating more joy within your relationship for yourself makes your relationship better. Okay. Now we're at the fourth thing. The fourth thing I want you to do is list 3 to 10 things your partner does that you do not like, that you think are bad, or you think they shouldn't do. This is the complaint list. Now, for some of you, this may be very easy. You may have like 150 things written down in 3 seconds. Or, you may have a hard time doing this. And if you have a hard time, I want you to give yourself full permission to complain. You are allowed to be quote unquote petty. No one ever has to know what's on this list that you're writing. This can be a completely private experience. So just give yourself permission to be like fully honest with what you don't like. And then once you've done that, once you've listed several things here, ask yourself why you think each of these things is bad, why you don't like it that your partner is this way or does this thing, or why you think they shouldn't be that way or do those things. Don't censor yourself here. Let it all out, even if you think you shouldn't be thinking these kinds of things. This is really important for 3 reasons. The first is that we often try to edit ourselves when we have complaints or negative thoughts about our partner. Sometimes we kind of think that we're bad for thinking that they're bad or something close to that. And so we try to disavow our displeasure with them or something they've done and tell ourselves that it's not really that bad, or we understand why they did this or that, or we understand why they are the way that we don't like them to be, and that it's really okay. It's all okay. And here's the thing, you may well eventually get to the point of truly believing that whatever it is you don't like that they do, or whatever it is that you don't like about the way they are, is okay with you. But you can't get there by being dishonest with yourself about whatever your current thinking is and whatever your current preferences are. So often we try to rush to feeling fine, but before we can get to feeling fine about anything, we have to allow ourselves to be honest and potentially not feel fine about things. The second reason why it's important to list the things your partner does or is that you don't like is that this is part of exercising your discretion. If you want to clarify what you want in a relationship, or if you're trying to decide if you want to stay in a relationship, you have to be really honest with yourself about what you're unhappy about. And then third, getting clear on why you're unhappy about whatever it is you're unhappy about can help you clarify whether or not you're upset about things that really matter to you, or if you're just clinging to ideas about the way people or relationships should be that don't really help you have the kind of relationship that you want to have. Again, you get to prefer whatever you prefer. You're allowed to want whatever you want. You're allowed to have whatever standards for a relationship you want to have. You can expect anything you want from your partner. There's nothing wrong with any set of preferences or desires or expectations. And it is also true that you may not be able to find someone who is going to fit all of your preferences or fulfill them all the time. And that isn't a bad thing, but figuring out where to compromise in a relationship, or figuring out whether you want to be in a relationship, starts with honing your discretion. Here's why. At the end of the day, nothing that your partner does that bothers you is really about them. It's really all about you. It's about your perceptions of what is good and bad, right and wrong, okay and not okay, acceptable and unacceptable, what you like and don't like, and so forth. And that may sound really strange because most of the time, for the most part, we are deeply attached to our ideas about what is right and wrong and good and bad in people or in relationships. We tend to think that our ideas about how relationships are or how our partner is supposed to be are like universal laws, like universal truths that apply to all of humanity because we think it is so. And this, it might not be totally unreasonable for us to see things the way we see things. Our preferences may be quite legitimate. The way we think things should be might not be completely baseless or completely without value. But that isn't really the point. The real question is the way we're looking at things helpful? Is the way we're looking at things helping us experience the kind of relationship that we want to experience? Let me share an example from my own life. So I could and have get annoyed and stay annoyed all day long about the way my spouse does the dishes. This might sound trivial, but I am dead serious. And really, there's no such thing as a trivial matter because we can make anything into a big deal or a small deal, depending on how we think about it. I could lose my mind over his dishwashing technique. And indeed, I have micromanaged the living shit out of him at times because I have very particular ideas about how dishes should be done. And if you were so inclined to hear it, I could tell you exactly why I'm right and exactly why my dishwashing technique and standards are important and legitimate and why it's so important for him to follow my instructions and so on and so on and so on. And I have to admit that I am like freakishly attached to some of these standards. But When I start to ask myself why it's so bad that his dishwashing technique isn't what I think it should be, my sense of self-righteous certainty starts to crumble a little. What is really going to happen if he doesn't wash the dishes the way I think he should or to the standard that I think he should? Nothing of consequence. I might have to rewash a spatula that has a speck of something left behind after he washed it. And believe me, if I wanted to, I could make that into the end of the world. I could freak out that there is still some schmutz left on the spatula and that I had to wash it again. But I've decided that I prefer to not make that the end of the world. I've decided that I prefer to make that a non-issue, not a big deal. And here's why. It creates so much more harmony in my household, so much better feelings in my relationship. And that's my ultimate preference here. So, whenever something comes up in your relationship that you don't like, you always have the opportunity to ask yourself why you don't like it. And when you ask yourself that question, get as specific as possible as you can in your answer. And then ask yourself if those reasons speak to the core of who you are and what you value most, or if they speak to fixations about how things are supposed to be that aren't really doing that much to improve your life. Okay. Another sip of water. Now, we'll talk about the fifth and final thing that we can do to clarify what we want in a relationship. And that is using your power of focus to your advantage. This is related to, but different from the last exercise. Within every relationship, there are going to be challenges and failings. There are going to be times when your partner annoys you. There are going to be times when your partner does things you don't really like. And the question is, how much do you want to focus on that stuff? If you wanted to find reasons to be dissatisfied with your partner all day long, I promise you, you could totally do it. And some people do this for weeks or months or even their entire lives. They devote their precious time and energy to finding fault in their partners. Or, some other people, like as soon as they see an imperfection, quote unquote, in a relationship, they're out of there. And this can become a long-term pattern too. Now, once again, I hasten to point out that if something is a deal breaker for you, you don't have to put up with it. You don't have to stick around. You get to decide what you want and what you don't want. You get to choose to end a relationship if that's what you want to do. But you also don't get to choose or manage everything your partner does or doesn't do. And it can be really hard to figure out where we want to draw the line and what constitutes a deal breaker for us and what doesn't, if we're always focused on what's wrong. So, for instance, I may have some quality control issues with the way my spouse does the dishes. But guess what? He does the dishes every single day. And by nearly any measure, my spouse does way more housework than I do. And he always has for the entirety of our relationship. And he came like that. He came out of the box like that, so to speak. He showed up in my life and he was just this way. We never sat down and made some agreement like, if you do this much of the domestic labor, I'll do these other things. For someone like me who thinks that most forms of domestic labor are like the worst thing ever, this is an amazing gift. Here's this person who does all of this stuff that I hate to do and does it, without complaining, without making a fuss about it or anything. And when I focus on that, I am deeply humbled and extremely grateful. When I focus on the fact that the frying pan he just washed isn't completely clean and there's a lake on the countertop next to the sink after he washed the dishes, I feel cranky and I give him a hard time. And not only is that totally unhelpful, it's a major focus error. Why on God's green earth would I focus on that stuff? when it doesn't really matter all that much. And this human that I share my life with does all of these other amazing things in the domestic labor department. So write down or get ready to write down what do you love about your partner in your relationship? Write down 3 to 10 things that you appreciate about your partner and or your relationship and why you love and appreciate those things. And I would like for you to do this even if you're in a place where you're pretty sure you want to end things with your partner, or you're seriously considering ending things with your partner. Recognizing what you appreciate about someone doesn't mean you have to stay with them. Recognizing the good in a relationship doesn't mean you have to keep it. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to end it or leave it. The really interesting thing is that intentionally and consistently shifting your focus to the things you love and appreciate about your partner can help you do a number of different things. It can help you enjoy your partner more and invest more of your love and care into your relationship. And it can also help you bring the relationship to an end with less acrimony and bitterness. There's a big difference between the energy of leaving a relationship because you're angry or upset or you think there are things wrong with the relationship, and the energy of leaving a relationship from a place of appreciating some elements of it and also knowing that it just isn't what you prefer. So take responsibility for actively focusing on what's right or what's working or what you like or love or enjoy. This can be done even if you don't immediately see a whole lot in the relationship that you appreciate. You can always find something good to focus on. And doing this can help you get better at using your power of focus to your best advantage. Cultivating this skill is helpful in every aspect of our lives. Okay. All right. If you are dealing with challenges in a relationship and you want support and guidance from a caring expert as you navigate your situation, I can help you. Go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com, to schedule an introductory coaching session with me. And of course, if you have enjoyed listening to today's podcast episode, I would love it if you would head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. Thank you so much for listening, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.